Before we get to that series, though, I need to tell you guys about my mechanic. My mechanic, Sean. Everyone needs a good mechanic, and Sean is an amazing mechanic. If you would see Sean at work, typically, he's an incredible mechanic, but typically he was a little gloomy, sort of, on the negative side, sort of cynical about stuff, like a lot of people are at their job. But he was very loyal to me and our family, and he's an incredible mechanic. Well, a few years back, my truck started misfiring, and I needed to go on like a 12-hour road trip to Gulf Shores, Alabama that day. And so this is obviously an issue, so I go into Sean's shop. Sean, man, truck's messing up. He's like, dude, we're slammed. I got nothing for you. I'm like, man, I gotta leave town in 3 hours, like a 12-hour road trip. Yes, bro. Okay, give me 2 hours. Grabs his buddy Mike. They disappear with the truck. During that time, I was so grateful. I was so moved by this gesture. I go over to Dick's Sporting Goods, and I get 2 $10 gift cards just to say thank you. It's not very much money. I was paying off a lot of student loan debt at the time. I was very broke. But I go back over. The truck is finished. It's all taken care of. I go, hey, Sean, Mike, I just want to say thank you so much for getting me in. Here's $10 at Dick's. Hey, I'll see you guys here in a few months. So I roll out. I come rolling back into Sean's shop a few months later, and I open the door, and before I look up, I hear, Drew, what's up, bro? How's it going? And it sounds like Sean, but like 1,000 more zest and like energy and life. And I'm like, and so I look up, and I'm like, Sean? And he goes, yeah, man. And I'm like, Sean? He goes, yeah, I know. He goes, bro, do you remember that gift card you gave me? I said, yeah. He says, man, I left work that day with your $10 gift card at Dick's, and I'm walking around Dick's. You can't really get a lot for $10. I was like, I know, I'm sorry. But I'm walking around trying to find and I see the snacks, up there at the front. I see a headband. I see some socks. And then I end up in front of the water bottles. And I'm looking at the water bottles, and I'm like, man, I can get a water bottle. So I grab it, take it to work the next day. I'm at work, having a bad day as usual, and I'm going to go get another cup of coffee. And the thought crosses my mind, what if instead of coffee, I fill up my water bottle and I drink that? So that's what I did. And later in the day, when I normally got my Coke, I drink water instead. Now, you normally got my Diet Coke, I drink another bottle of water. He goes, man, I did that for 3 days. Terrible headaches, huge withdrawal, basically. But after a week, I felt amazing. So I was like, well, here I am, feeling pretty good. This is Sean talking. He's like, well, here I am. What if I bring my own lunch? Instead of going out to fast food every day, he started bringing some chicken, some vegetables, a little bit of rice, maybe some quinoa here and there. Does that for about a week. He's like, man, I'm starting to lose some weight. I'm feeling really good. What if I start to bicycle to work? It's only a few miles. So he starts biking to work. He does that for a few weeks, loses a few more pounds, is feeling really good. He's like, man, what if I don't stop there? I start working out, like lifting. I do, he's like, I started P90X. Haven't missed a day. He's like, bro, I have lost 60 pounds. And now I'm so motivated to be a better dad to my kid. I'm going to marry the mom of my kid. I've started praying. I want to go volunteer at the public library. And I even had this sense that you were going to come here today. And I was like, oh, wow. And I was like, dude, I need to hand out more gift cards. Life changed right here. He's like, dude, you changed my life. I was like, bro, I didn't do anything for this. He goes, even crazier, there's a guy in the back of the shop. He saw what was happening to me, and he's lost 90 pounds. It's just going crazy, bro. I'm like, this is nuts, Sean. And he's just so motivated. We go on and get the oil change. We're checking out, and he said something that I'll never forget. He said, Drew, for a long time, I talked about getting healthy. I thought about it. I even believed in it conceptually. But then I actually did something about it. I actually acted on it. I began to train. And he said, that made all the difference. He's like, that little water bottle was just that nudge I needed to get going. And we all know there's a dramatic difference between talking about something, thinking about something, maybe even believing in something, and then doing something about it. And there's a letter in the Bible called 1 Timothy. It's loaded with a ton of stuff. But Paul is writing to his friend Timothy, who's a mentee to him. So Paul has been helping Timothy grow in his faith, grow in his leadership, and there's a lot going on in 1 Timothy. But in 1 Timothy 4, a rough summary of what's going on there is basically there's a lot going on. A lot of people are saying stuff that just isn't true. Isn't true about God, isn't true about what's right or wrong, how to live. Total just lies. A lot of bad stuff's going on around Timothy. And Paul says, hey, all this noise, this unproductive talk, people are just talking about stuff. Hey, that's all going on, Timothy. But you do this. And so I want to look at that verse. What did he tell Timothy to do? 1 Timothy 4. It says, have nothing to do with godless myths and old wives' tales. Rather, train yourself to be godly. All this is going on. You train yourself to be godly. For physical training is of some value, but godliness has value for all things, holding promise for both the present life and the life to come. It says, Timothy, there's a lot of noise going on. A lot of people are talking about stuff that's just pointless and unproductive. You get to work. Act on the faith that you know. Act on the truths that you know. Live in reality and get to work. Train. That word for train is in the Greek gymnazo. It's just to exercise vigorously. Get to work. Exercise. Train. It goes on to say, this is a trustworthy saying that deserves full acceptance. So I fully embrace what I just told you, Timothy. That is why we labor and strive, because we have put our hope in the living God, who is the Savior of all the people. So he gives a clear why, but he says, hey, this is why we labor, this is why we strive, this is why we train, because we put our hope in God. And he's our Savior. Now, we looked at last week at Late Night, if you're here, and last semester, and if not, a recap, though, is when we first begin to follow Christ, we first start that relationship with God, that's not something we train at, that's not something we work at, that's not something we strive or labor at. That's something, the Bible uses the words like receive and believe and just turn to, trust. Those are words the Bible uses, that we start a relationship. That's something that God does in us. But post that, so after we've received Christ, we've begun to follow him, there is this call to train. And this isn't just in one verse. I got a few others. There's a lot of them. Hebrews 12:14 says, make every effort to live in peace with everyone and to be holy or to be godly. Make every effort. 2 Peter 1, for this reason, make every effort to add to your faith. And then that gives a whole bunch of things to grow in 2 Peter 1. And in Philippians 2:12-13, it says, continue to work out your salvation with fear and trembling. For it's God who works in you to will and to act in order to fulfill his good purpose. So God is working in us as we're working out our salvation. In the last sort of Greek. So these verses were originally written in Greek. So it's interesting to look at the Greek word for the word work out, this idea of training. And it means it's katergazomai in Greek. If someone actually can speak Greek, they can correct me how to say that. But that is how you spell it. And that literally just means to perform. Or to work in a way that brings results. And so what Paul is saying in Philippians 2 is like, hey, perform in a way that yields results. That's what we're called to do. Once we've begun to follow Christ, hey, this is true of you, perform it this way. Work in a way that brings results. Train to win. That's the series we're going to have for the next few weeks. Train to win. Train to win. Win today, win this semester. When it comes to your faith, you being a leader who impacts the world. Train to win in your marriage one day, your family, the rest of your life. We want to train to win. It's training in a way that brings results. And that is how the world works when you think about it. Like, the only teams remaining in the NFL playoffs right now have performed in a way that's led to the results that they have. And man, I am so nervous as a Chiefs fan for this game this weekend. Hoping the performance yields some great results. Yeah. Long ways for you guys. But man, it's how the world works. You want to be some of the last teams in the World Cup. You want to be some of the last teams in the NBA, etc. All that. You perform in a certain way, it brings results. You want to be wealthy, typically, unless it's handed to you, you typically work hard and invest over time, and you become wealthy. You start to work out, you'll gain muscle or cardiovascular conditioning. If you eat differently, you will feel differently. If you try to grow in leading, you'll become a better leader. I mean, you train in a way that leads to results. As a dad right now, helping a 4-year-old learn her handwriting, we've been working on that for 2 months, and it's night and day different. It's just how it works. You train in a way, it leads to results. But for some reason, the way you're probably like, why is he even talking about this? For some reason, what I've seen over the years, though, is when we step into the spiritual realm of trying to grow, it becomes blurry. This idea of training and results, for some reason, it becomes blurry. And there's a misunderstanding that it's more of like a passive thing. Like, oh yeah, it's something you sort of surrender, you sort of hope that God does that in your life. And it's like, hey, God wants to do that. Really the limiting factor is, do I train? Do I train in a way that brings those results? And it's so clear, as we've seen from the verses we've already looked at. Now, as we think about training to win this semester, so that's a series, what's the key quality we're going to look at tonight? That I think, it's going to affect everything else we talk about this semester. The next 3 weeks, we're going to be looking at these different sort of pillars of a good training regimen. You want to train, hey, here's 3 things to have involved in your training plan. Tonight, though, affects all of those. It's almost like a foundational mindset to those, and it's consistency. Having consistency, being a consistent person. Now, this is not good. Give it up for Joe, the tech guy. Thank you, brother. Hey, so as we think about consistency, what is consistency? I think, is that going in now? Turn it off. Check. Is that going in consistency? Try this one. Check. I'm nervous about that Chiefs game, I'll be honest. Okay. Consistency. Hey, oh yeah. I'm excited to talk about this. You want to know about consistency? I think we got to learn from my 2 girls. Okay, I got 2 girls. We'll start with my firstborn. So she is wildly consistent. This floor was clean the night before. This is pre 6 a.m. every day. You got a new. This I think was some kind of show for her stuffies. There was something going on. This was the other. Oh, Dad. That's Dad. Wrapped up for bed. Vivi, Mom, Annie. We tear through Kleenexes. I gotta go off brand. It's just killing us. Here's another morning. We got like a family vacation. And here's the thing. Like I'm telling you, I heard this going on like at 5:45 in the morning. I'm like, oh, what's going on down there? And so I come down and she's diligently cleaning her room. She said, oh, Mom said if I clean my room, I can get out my rock collection. And that was the night before. So she wakes up and boom, this like thrill of, okay, I gotta get to work. No one's more consistent in the mornings than my firstborn, Vivi. Now, Annie, no one's more consistent with chapstick. Guys, I'm telling you, this is just the last 3 days. This is just the last 3 days hanging out with Sissy. When she's happy, chapstick, sad, chapstick. It's like a reflective. I hugged her after I took the picture. Right after the bath, we sort of had that earlier. One time she was hanging back on the couches. I'm like, what's she doing back there? That's what she's doing. Chapstick. Isn't that amazing? I'm so glad I got that picture. Then the other day, she disappears. So it's me and the girls. I can't remember what Tori's doing. And I was like, hey, where's Annie? And Mary's like, I don't know. And okay, we gotta go find her. And we're looking all around. In our closet, the door's closed and the lights are off. We're like, hey, you know what? Might as well check. And we open the door, and in the dark, here's what she's doing in the dark. Just sitting there, putting on chapstick. Consistency. Oh, this is good. This is right before I was leaving today. I was like, oh, I actually needed some chapstick. And Annie's carrying around like all these toys. She's like running around laughing. I go, Annie, hey, do you have any chapstick? She goes, yeah. Drops all of her stuff and it's in her hand. So under all of the toys was pre-opened chapstick. I go, what? She's like very serious. Look at me. Yeah. And then takes it back. It was incredible. Consistency, though. We know the word. It's just showing up every day. It's being consistent. You're not supposed to define the term with the word, but it's being true every single day. It comes from a Latin word that consistent is Latin just for standing firm. The biblical term, I think we would add on there, it's not just standing firm, but standing firm to the end. Continuing to have integrity to what's true day in and day out. Not perfect, but continuing to show up day in and day out. That's consistency. Sometimes the word in the Bible, so I'm summarizing all of these words with the word consistent. The word in the Bible, sometimes faithfulness, or even in some translations probably fidelity, but faithfulness, integrity, steadfastness, endurance, perseverance. Those are all carry this connotation of being consistent. A lot of them have the same Greek root word. Even the word daily, as we're going to look at later, carries this idea of being consistent. Now, this is a quality for anyone who's following Christ. God, He develops this quality in us. It has us in process. And so that means throughout our whole life, He's going to give us opportunities to choose consistency. This is in a famous passage. It's a list of qualities that God develops in us. Faithfulness is in there. It's in Galatians 5:22 through 23. It says, but the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, forbearance, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. And so we got faithfulness here. Hey, this is a reality where the Spirit of God is at work. There's going to be an ever-increasing faithfulness. The older and older we get, the more we grow in our faith. But think about those other qualities. If you're not consistent in those other qualities, do we really have any of those qualities? So let's take love. If I'm rude 60% of the time, so I'm not consistently loving, am I really loving? Or if you find out, I'm mean to my wife and my kids when I'm nice to you, it's well, is he actually loving? What about joy? What if I only have joy when all the circumstances of that week are just lining up? I got no tests. Things are going great. The Jayhawks are out of the slump. Man, things are just going awesome. Man, then I got joy. Well, if you don't have it also in the hard times, do I really have joy? So you see how consistency really is connected to all of these character qualities, the lifestyle that God calls us to. And if He calls us to it, He's wanting to develop this consistency muscle in us. He also gives us what we need to develop in it. He gives us the resources to accomplish this. So in 2 Timothy 1, Paul is writing Timothy again, his mentee, and he's basically reminding Timothy of God's call in his life. And just in case Timothy is feeling timid or nervous about doing this, or that he's able to do that, Paul gives him this reminder. He says, for the Spirit God gave us doesn't make us timid, but it gives us power, love, and self-discipline. Hey, Timothy, you're feeling nervous about this, feeling unsure about this call in your life. Well, God gives us power, love, and self-discipline. And so if God supplies that for us, then we're without excuse. As the least consistent person in the room or the most consistent person in the room, we can all develop and we can train in our faith, we can grow, and we can develop in consistency because God gives us what we need. So before we look at 3 things to be consistent in, I want to just take a brief look in a metaphorical mirror together with some questions that can help you to think man, am I consistent? Because if you walked up to me a couple weeks ago and said, hey man, you pretty consistent? I'm yeah, 6 out of 10. That's typically if you ask anyone anything, it's pretty good. Better than most. I'm not perfect. Probably a 6 out of 10. But some of these questions, as we read through them, it's ooh, am I actually consistent? So I have them on your handout. Do I typically do the thing I know I should do, or am I inconsistent in values? How's my procrastination? Is my work ethic dramatically different from day to day? Am I a different person depending on who I'm around? Do I like to take the easy path or the right one? How do I make decisions? How often do I follow through on promises or new goals I set? What are my favorite excuses to not do what I know I should do? Does how I feel have a big influence on what I do any given day? Some good things to think through is okay, am I a consistent person? Do I typically line up with what I know to be good, what I know to be true? That's what I do. That's what I strive to live. So those questions are helpful. Now, what to be consistent in? If we want to train to win this semester, what should I be consistent? Well, I've got 3. The first one here, I've been doing this a long time, I'm pretty old. I've given over 100 late night talks. I've never had this as a point. Never had this. So here's the first time to this point in any late night talk. What do we want to be consistent in? Developing discernment. developing discernment. The reason for this is the more I've been reading the Bible, read through the whole Bible every year, the more I've been reading through the Bible, this is all over. So much of the New Testament is, whether it's Peter or Paul or James or John, whoever's writing it, they're trying to help people think rightly about different situations and scenarios in life. They're trying to develop discernment. Discernment is just, okay, what's reality? What's good? What's right? You're trying to discern. And, these days, as we all know, it's like, man, with the amount of time we're on our phone, just intaking, there are so many opinions and viewpoints, misinformation, people, even some people claiming, this is what the Bible says, so much info coming in that you're trying to wade through. They also say that our generation knows the Bible the least of any generation. That's what they say, statistically. And they also describe us as big on emotionalism, which is basically, we determine what's right or wrong by how strongly we feel about something. And the stronger I feel, the more right it is, right? And if you disagree, we'll all just get louder, feel more strongly, and I will be more right than you. And you think about throwing all that into this cocktail, it's like, so really emotionally led and driven, don't know much about the Bible, and there's tons of stuff coming out. So it's like, man, how do I discern? How can I get through that and land on what's good and right? How can I not just get tossed around by bad thinking or every new and popular idea? Practicing discernment is a huge, huge part of parenting. I can't wait for you guys to walk through it at some point. Every day. So again, for the last 24 hours, sometimes I've had to practice discernment. Annie walks in and hits Vivi. She's typically a very sweet girl, but we do have some violence at times. And I saw like the tail end. And okay, was that a premeditated attack? It's an option. 2, did Vivi just push her? Was it self-defense? And that's, you guys process that someday. What are your thoughts on self-defense? And does it go too far? And you got to learn a lesson, all that stuff. Self-defense. Was she falling? That happens all the time. She's falling, hits sis, grabs her hair. Was she trying to wrestle? She doesn't know how to wrestle. They're wrestling today, and she just smacks Vivi in the face. And he's like, oh, it's like, okay, that's not wrestling. But she's learning. 21 months old. But you're trying to discern reality. Annie is making a funny face at me. I'm like, okay, is she sad? Is she, filling up her diaper a little bit? Is she messing with me? She faked us out at dinner the other night. She acted like she was about to start crying, and then she just looked up and started laughing. And it's like, wow, this is layers deep here. But you're trying to discern reality all the time with parenting. You're like, okay, because it's like, oh, do I need to hug her? Should we change her diaper? What do we do here? What's reality? This is like I said, this is a big thread throughout the New Testament. 2 summary verses of this idea. One in Romans 12:9, hate what is evil, cling to what is good. And then 1 Thessalonians 5:21, examine everything, hold firmly to that which is good. You guys can go read the context on those, but very short. Examine everything, test everything, hold firmly to that which is good. Like I said, I love my girls. They're awesome. Playing with some feathers. Oh yeah, this is a summer pillow fight with some feathers here. Love my 2 girls here. They're great. Okay, don't talk to a neighbor. You can't talk, you can't get hints or anything. If you think these are my 2 girls, raise your hand. Okay, well here, we'll make it a little bit easier for you guys. Out of 1 or 2, which one are my 2 girls? Hold up a 1 or hold up a 2. Go ahead and hold it up. Hold it up. Hey, you gotta hold something up. Hold something up. You gonna make something up. 1 or 2. I'm not gonna be offended. I'm not gonna be offended here. Hold something up. All right, yeah, neither of those are my girls, okay? I know it's tough. I know it's tough to see some of them. Y'all, because you know my girls really well, you're like, dude, what? Is this a joke? Why the feather thing? What's going on? But to discern reality, we got to know the truth. To be able to see past those 2, and wait. No. They're not even up there, right? you have to know my girls pretty well. Like, I can pick my girls out of a huge crowd, tons of kids, I can hear their cry. At 5:45 in the morning, I can hear a little subtle noise from the basement, and Bibby is on the third shelf of her closet getting the Barbies down right now. I know them very well. We gotta know what's right, we gotta know the truth to be able to discern. And so we want to be able to be mature, so we're not just sort of tossed around by any idea that comes across us, and almost have like a healthy skepticism. Like a good, healthy, is that true? Is that right? I mean, of your emotions, we should all be skeptical of our emotions at times. Like, is this leading me somewhere good? Be skeptical of even me. It's like, man, is that really what the Bible says? Skeptical of someone teaching the Bible. Go read it on your own. Another key part of developing discernment, man, is having someone who's been there, that knows the Bible. I think about that in any area of life. Investing, man, an investor can really help to prepare for kids' college, right? It's kind of like, hey, what vehicle should I use for my money to do that? Some of the guys in the back are like, yeah, I got some thoughts for you. Man, you want a good workout plan. You go to someone who's been there, done that, some kind of a trainer, spiritually, to help you discern. Someone who's just been there, been through a lot of life and knows the Bible, and they care about you. But to have discernment, we got to know the truth. We got to know what's good, what's right, and so we can hold on to it. Number 2, remembering the why. Remembering the why. We got to be consistent remembering the why. Having a good, strong why will make us do a lot of stuff. Run a marathon, some of us. You have a good, strong why. I don't know what that why is, but it'll lead you to run a marathon. It'll lead some of us to floss. It'll lead some of us to go buy some new cool Carhu shoes. If you guys remember the shoes I was talking about last night, got high arches. That's the why. It'll lead some of us to buy new clothes. Whatever the why. Man, I'm not in style anymore, or whatever. You know, I got some Christmas cash. You have a why, it leads you to action. And when it comes to growing in our faith, it's going to be upstream in college. We're going to make mistakes. We're going to have days of low motivation. We're going to need a really strong why. Just to carry us, we come back to, and I try to remember that. And so there's a lot. I just threw up a few options. This is what we saw earlier in 1 Timothy 4. This is why we labor and strive. We have a why. It's because we put our hope in the living God. Some other examples, 1 Corinthians 6:20, we were bought at a price by Jesus. The love of Christ could be a why. He wants to give us life. God has a plan. We could probably develop several whys that keep us going and moving forward in the training process. But we got to remember the why. And when we have a significant why, it'll be impossible to ignore it. You just can't shake it. It's like I can't not act on this why that I have. Okay, last is training daily. Be consistent in training daily. Training daily. So last late night we looked at this verse from Jesus, Luke 9:23. It says, whoever wants to be my disciple must deny themselves and take up their cross daily and follow me. So it doesn't need to be necessarily big things that we're consistently training in, or at least at the start. But we do have this call to daily. And so what can I do today? I was in Crunch a year and a half, 2 years ago, and this older guy, he's in his 60s, I believe, was working out in front of me. And he is repping 315 on the bench like it's 135. And I usually don't comment. I know, guys, it's like, whoa. And I usually don't comment on the guy working out. I was like, bro, what's going on here? He's like, sort of chuckling. He's like, yeah. He goes, you know what, man? And he dropped this line. I'll never forget this. He goes, I never lifted professionally, but I always lifted consistently. He's like, I actually just set the world record for my age. Just because I just try to be consistent. I can't find him online or anything. And man, I thought there's so much to that. He's like, oh dude, busy season with the kids or work also. I just tried to be consistent. There were some times I couldn't. I try not to miss 2 days. It's like, you know, what a great, as we think about just trying to do it daily, that my aim was, and I'm just going to try to be a little bit more consistent and a little bit more consistent, little by little, and watch that spiritual compound interest happen and see God change my life. For me, starting, it was like, I'd never read the Bible before. It was try to read the Bible a couple days a week for a few minutes. And then pretty soon I put it in my backpack. And so we go to study hours at the fraternity, I'd pull it out for a few minutes, and I'd read for a little bit. And eventually I'd try to Read more days than I miss. I try to say yes to Bible study more than I said no. Just those little steps. So what could that be for you? What could be a small thing you could do today, even tonight? What's something you could do tonight just to begin to develop that consistency muscle? So we want to train to win. We got to develop discernment. We need to remember the why and train daily. Well, tonight we get to hear a story of someone who illustrates this. He's going to walk us through a little bit of his journey.